All right, and welcome back to the Black Psychologist Podcast. I am your humble and gracious host, or one half of your host, Dr. Kyle Osborne. And of course, I am never here by myself. I'm here with the one and only, he's your idol, the highest title, numero uno. He's not a Puerto Rican, but he speaks so that you know, Dr. Jason Coleman. How are you, bro?
I'm good, man. I'm good, man. You pulled that one out of nowhere.
Yeah, you like that? You're a little bit of a throwback, bro.
Throwback joint. What's up with you though, man?
Nothing, man. Another week. We back at it. Saving lives. We're at episode 14.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Episode 14. So we absolutely first and foremost want to thank everybody for watching, for listening. Again, we can't do it without your support and without your viewership. So again, we're on YouTube, we're on Pandora, we're on Spotify, we're on Google, iHeartRadio, we're on Apple podcast, and we're also on SoundCloud. So we'll add that also to the repertoire. So but again, we appreciate everybody listening and supporting us and commenting. So continue to watch, listen, subscribe, and share. And towards the end of this podcast, of this episode, Dr. J and I have we got a treat for you guys. So we're definitely want to make it more interactive for you guys. But we'll get into today's topics and everything. How you doing over there, bro?
Man, I'm good. I can't complain, Long day, but it's good. It's good to be employed, and be thankful for that.
Yeah.
No complaints, man. I want to thank everybody for the support. Definitely humbled by it, thankful, and just encourage everybody to subscribe, continue to comment, and like the video. So thank you.
All right, cool. All right, let's get in with it. All right, so we're going to start on the international level. So recently, the International Olympic Committee, otherwise known as the IOC, recently stated that the Black Lives Matter gear will be barred or banned from athletic apparel at this summer's Olympic Games. It said that those who do not follow these rules, as far as not wearing the Black Lives Matter, will face some form of punishment. And also taking a knee or or raising a fist in support of racial equality during the games will also not be allowed. So, what were your thoughts when you saw this news flash coming through?
I didn't know. Well, listen, I heard that there was sanctions for kneeling, right? I didn't know that it was that specific, like throwing fists in the air, right? Because I probably read a different article, but I mean, what I read, they said they're not allowed to demonstrate on the field of play during the official ceremony or at the podium. So they basically like outlawing them having any type of protest during the Olympic Games at all. I mean, I think it sets a bad example. You know what I mean? Especially when we're talking about the world stage, everything that's going on in the world, like simultaneously in terms of people being oppressed. I thought it was interesting that the U.S. team, they kind of like gave their kind of athletes approval, for lack of a better term, or permission is a better word, to kind of protest, right? I thought that was interesting, knowing that they're going to get fined. So I guess what I was thinking about was like how many athletes will probably do that, like knowing they're going to get sanctioned anyway, and protest anyway. But again, I think overall, I think it sends a bad message, but I think the United States did the right thing in terms of, their committee, saying that they're not going to punish any of their athletes, for any peaceful protesting, So I think that's a good thing, but overall, it's not a good look to me. What do you think?
It seemed really contradictory to me for the reason that like you mentioned, it's the Olympic podium. It's this is the paragon of international communication, right? I always looked at like the Olympic podium is like, and the games itself it's like the ultimate media of communication, right, to the whole world. And it's like for the Olympic frontier, like you can't prove as a barrier to like human rights. Like that's how you talk about what's going on in each country, right? It can't just be a situation where, at least I don't believe so, for it to be like, okay, we're gonna have these games, and but whatever is happening, in some of these countries, especially as we're talking about like human rights, then we're just not going to talk about that, right? We're just going to have these athletes come here, they're going to compete, but we're not going to worry about what's happening in their own backyard. Like I look at like it definitely shines a negative light on the Olympic committee, on the committee themselves. Like I feel like this policy is like a direct assault on like the freedom expressions of Black athletes. So but I'm not totally surprised, because this was also brought to the forefront, or this policy was brought to, by a commission that includes no Black members. So, I'm not, I'm it's not totally surprising. It's just really unfortunate, and like you said, it sounds like a really negative light.
So let me ask you: did they specify Black Lives Matter?
They did.
Wow.
They specified Black Lives Matter. They said it was they had sent out a survey, right? Because they have something called Rule 50. So they said they sent out this survey to athletes and organizations to regarding upholding Rule 50. And Rule 50 is it's supposed to ensure that athletes can experience the games without any disruption or diversive disruption. And so they said that they sent out right. So they said they sent out this survey to the athletes, and the majority of the athletes that they sent these surveys out to said, "Oh yeah, we're in favor of upholding Rule 50." But I feel like, well, that's a policy, or that's a survey that's only empowering like the majority, when it's the people that are in the minority that need to be heard, right? So I don't even feel like that's valid.
I mean, you know what's crazy about this? And what you said was valid, like, and what it made me think about is, like, what I think they're fearful of, and this is my opinion, like, we look at the Super Bowl, right? Our artists do the Super Bowl for free, right? Because it's one of the biggest platforms you'll get.
Right.
Right? The Olympics probably will dwarf that, right? In terms of places and people it will reach, right? So we're talking about one of the biggest platforms in the world. And what I think they're scared of is, honestly, I think the power of this movement that we've seen this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that they are scared of the symbolism that would come with athletes of color throwing up, whether it be a Black Power fist, whether it be, wearing shirts that say Black Lives Matter on that stage, right? They're scared of another scene from 1968 with Tommy Smith and John Carlos, right?
Right.
They're scared of how, think about how iconic and powerful that image is. You know what I mean? So they're scared of that. So that's why I'm saying, I think the challenge is going to be, and what the interesting part is going to be, how many athletes kind of defy that. You know what I mean? I know a lot of that probably is also going to depend on what countries they're representing. You know what I mean? Because they're going to have differences in terms of the leeway they'll have. But I want to see, because I think it's going to be more than a few. That's just my thought, but I'm thinking it's going to be more than a few.
Yeah, and they tried to say that, well, except some forms of apparel that's accepted would be like, you can wear peace, you can wear respect, you can wear inclusion, equality, these very generic, type
Right.
of vague type of expressions. And I'm not sending that in a disparaging way of those expressions, or those words, because they're important. However, we're talking about Black Lives Matter, right? When
Right.
you specifically say, no, you can't wear it, you can't say anything, you can't have anything, that logo, that expression, that phrase in any form of capacity on there, like you mentioned, like, no, there's fear out of that, right? We can't have this growing, we can't have this becoming an issue, we can't have whatever their thought process is. Absolutely. Like, no, it's gonna be, this is what's happening, right? You can't just, it can't be a situation where, again, you're gonna have athletes who this is affecting every day of their lives when they're not at the Olympics. But then when they're there at the Olympics for 3.5 weeks or however long the games go on, it's like, no, well, you know what, just don't bring that into this house. Like, no, that's not the way it works. And I'm happy that some of the organizations and some of the companies are supporting their athletes. Because I feel like now, especially since you're going to say, hey, you know what, go ahead and do that, whatever you need to do or whatever punishment comes this way, we got you. Absolutely. Like I'm looking forward to these athletes, going out and showing their support, and it's down to the fact that they have, their companies backing them. So but yeah, this to me, this isn't a good look for the IOC. So I'm hoping with the ongoing conversations they, you know, um, reverse course on it. But I don't know. It's just not a good look for them.
I mean, listen, even if they don't, you know how this stuff works, with some of these issues, man, like maybe the position that they take may end up shining more light on the issues that they're trying to kind of sweep under the rug, You know how it kind of works like that sometimes. So it may backfire on them that way. I mean, I hope it does, because again, it's kind of like absurd for this to be happening on that stage, because we're talking about the world, but then it shouldn't be surprising, right? Because we know that all over the world, there's people of color that are being oppressed, right? So where else Black Lives Matter and that phrase and what it really represents, it couldn't mean more on the Olympic stage, because it applies to almost everywhere in the world. You know what I mean? When we're talking about generally, like, it's people of color suffering. So I see why they do not want, that platform to be used to get that message out to more people, but hopefully it'll backfire. That's all I can say.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because I feel like they're spending so much time and being so specific towards this particular movement that they don't want to happen, that you're bringing more attention, right? No more organizations that support this movement are going to be, like, again, financially they have an impact on things, so it might, like you said, work against them. But it's always funny to see these committees try to be so exclusive and keep certain organizations and certain movements out, and then when you receive the backlash, now it's like you got to reverse course and they got to go into this whole damage control, they got to go through all this, where if you were just inclusive from the very beginning, you wouldn't have to go through this. But I don't know, we'll see. It'll be something to continue to monitor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doubtful, because it's like, where's the accountability going to come from? You know what I mean? This is not like, this is the what do they call it, IOC or whatever it is. I don't know who holds them accountable. They're the ones that are supposed to be setting the standards. So it seems like kind of like a board to me or something like that. So I don't know, but I'm doubtful that they're going to change course. But again, hopefully all of this effort, will backfire in terms of the message. So
yeah, we'll see. All right, moving forward. All right, so dipping into the entertainment industry. All right, so recently, singer and actress Andra Day, who was recently nominated for an Oscar and won a Golden Globe for her role in the Billie Holiday movie, The United States versus Billie Holiday. She recently opened up about her past struggles with porn addiction and sex addiction while filming the movie. She said, I had come out of something in my own life dealing with porn and sex addiction, and I'm being candid because I'm not the only one, but I knew I wanted all of that gone. So she talks about, just some of the things that she experienced it and how it was very similar to her own struggles with when she was filming the Billie Holiday role. So, what is your take on her coming out and being so open about her past struggles, and then also how it correlated with the role?
I mean, I think, it's kind of ironic, because, we talked about this, kind of on the last, episode ago, in terms of talking about pornography and how it impacts relationships. But I kind of learned a lot, right? Number one, obviously, not that it's shocking, but it's relevant, right? Because it's her, right? Because she's a person that's in the public light, obviously. But just in terms of looking at people who have have addictions to pornography, it's like, I learned a lot in terms of, like, 5 to 8% of adults are addicted to pornography. And the part that I was kind of surprised to is about is what they were saying was that individuals that are addicted to pornography spend between 11 and 12 hours, per week watching pornography.
That's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time, bro.
And that, that kind of, and of course they were talking about, it hurts their personal relationships, what we were kind of touched on during that show. Yeah. So that part made sense. But 11 to 12 hours, man, that's half of a day.
Yeah.
It's a long time, man.
That's more than what we talked about running to the bathroom or running to the garage with the laptop or with your phone. That's a lot of uninterrupted time.
Right. Like we were talking about like a halftime, like a break, what I mean? But this is like really dedicating some serious time. So, and then kind of looking what they were saying, like at the prevalence, right? In terms of pornography on the internet, they said 12% of all web pages, are pornographic, and 25% of all online requests are related to sex. Mm-hmm. That's a quarter. You know what I mean? So people are going to Google. 1 out of every 4th person is something related to sex, whether that's lingerie, whether that's a video, whether it's this or that. It's just interesting. You know what I mean? Because our society is focused on it. So I would think that maybe that number would be a little bit higher, 5 to 8%. I thought it would have been a little bit higher, but what did you think?
I mean, first thing that stood out with me, like I saw the movie a month or so ago, and it was one, she's incredible, right? She totally immersed herself into this role. And I mean, she lost like 40 pounds for the role. The role itself is so hypersexualized because of the issues and things that Billie Holiday was faced with. But I mean, like, there's a lot of sex in this movie, like the sex scenes, because of like her escapades and other different things that Billie Holiday was experiencing. I mean, there's a lot. So I could only imagine, if I'm thinking about it from Andre's, from her perspective, of if this is something that you're already struggling with, and then you're going into a role where this is like full frontal, right? It's fully like dealing with some of the things that you're struggling with. Like, I can only imagine. Like, she talks about how when she was filming the role, and I don't know much about like method actors and what all that entails, but again, it seems like she totally immersed herself into this character. Because she mentions smoking cigarettes, like her smoking cigarettes increased. She talks about she was drinking at a higher rate. And, when you're looking at some of the things, the co-occurring disorders that are associated with sex addiction or porn addiction, is sex addiction, depression, anxiety, substance use, mood disorder, right? So all of these things that that she was experiencing, it coincides with it. And I can only imagine again what she had to deal with just going through the role. And you're right, like this is not only, I think, the relationship component of people that are diagnosed with porn addiction, but it's the time part. So I think that also contributes to the issue in the relationships, right? Because if you're dedicating and you're investing so much time to doing that, yeah, absolutely, we're gonna have some issues. And I think the other thing that was interesting in the article that she talked about was that they say is the ease, right? The ease of porn access, or the ease of, I think, probably in someone like, and I don't know her, I'm not gonna act like I know her personal life, but in her role being a celebrity. Also, we mentioned we talked about the LL Cool J, right? Because he talked about in his book that came out about 15 years ago or so, in his autobiography, he talks about his issues that he had and he struggled with porn. I mean, being, with sex and porn. And I think it's just the access of it, right? So you have maybe your normal individuals that have access to porn. They got it on their phone, they got it on their laptop, they got it on the TV. Then you also have these celebrities that have access to sex anytime they want, right?
Right.
So again, it's one of those things that complicates or adds a barrier to treatment, because when you have so much access to it, now the issues, things get worse. And then you depending on whether there's social support around. So like this was, falls right in line with what we were talking about. But again, 5 to 8%, like that's a lot. It's a lot. That's a lot more than I thought it was. I thought it was a smaller number,
It is, man. And it, I mean, LL Cool J, when you talk about that story, like the amount of time that he was talking about that he was spending, like pursuing, I'm not saying pursuing women, but I'm saying engaged in that, right? Whether it's picking up groupies, whether it's, his own kind of study situations, or whether it's random people, he spent a lot of time invested, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the crazy part. And of course, there was substance abuse, that going on there. He's been kind of candid about angel dust, cocaine use, and things like that. But again, I mean, just how common it is, I think is shocking. And then the fact that these are, big name people, obviously that we know and respect. It's good in terms of normalizing it, right? Because we know a lot of people in society are struggling. And it's obviously good that they're willing to talk about it on a public stage in terms of stigma. But man, this is just it's one of those kind of addictions that we don't really talk about too much, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of pornography, gambling, those type of things, we're usually focused on substance use, but it can equally impact your life. One other thing that was crazy though, and I wanted to know what you thought about this in terms of the danger, right? Like I already said, they said 25% of all online requests were related to sex, but they said the average age of exposure to pornography is 11 years old.
Sounds about right. Yeah, I believe it.
I mean, I believe it. You know what I mean? But I mean, listen, man, that's 1 year older than 10. You know what I mean? I mean, this is that's young, man. That's young.
That's that access, man. You got to figure how things have become more accessible over the years, right? So you got to think about back in the day, like even, I'll use myself as an example. Like when we were young, it was magazines, right? It was magazines, right. or trying to get into like the back part of like one of the of like the video rentals, right? They had the little area in the back. You know what I mean? You were trying to get to the back curtain.
They usually had the curtain.
Yeah, you was trying to get to the back curtain, or you was trying to go when you went to the bookstore, right? It was like a little section over there where you saw like all these guys going over there and he's reading magazines, and so you had different things. Like that was the access at that point. But then as the 90s, like the late 90s came, the internet exploded, right? So with the internet exploding and people got access to it, then, now all of a sudden, it's on social media. But even now you got the internet on your phone. So the access of it, and think about it, like most kids have phones at a very early age just because they're going to school, they're going, all these other different things that they're involved in, and they're not going to just have like any phone. They're not going to have like just the old school Obama phone or anything, right? They're not going to just have the phone you could only call 2-3 people. Like, nah, like, and I know that the social aspect of things, like when you're in school or as a kid, like you can't just be not having not a smartphone or anything. You're not going to have a flip phone. So you're going to have like a smartphone. You're going to have the iPhone. You're going to have an Android, all these other different things. And that comes with internet access. And, like, kids got access to it. Like you're talking like 10, 11. What's that, like 5th grade, 4th grade, something rather? So you got kids, they got access to it, and there's no way you can put parental rights, and parents can put all these other different things, but kids got access to it. They're not watching it on their phone. They're watching it on their friend's phone. They're watching it on their laptops. Like all these devices, like they talk about in the article, it's access, and that further complicates or, with the ease of things.
Yeah, man. I mean, I just think, again, it's an impossible thing, but, the lines of communication between, caregivers and children have to be, you got to leave them as open as possible, right? Because if these kids see things, and if they feel uncomfortable, they have to be able to tell you, you know what I mean? Because their friends that have less supervision are going to be the ones showing them, and all kids are curious. So if you don't talk to them about it in advance, more than most likely they're going to make the wrong decision. You know what I mean? We see it every day. So it's crazy, man. But again, I think it's just like we talk a lot about what the benefits of technology, right? In terms of like getting messages out there, in terms of like organizing, protesting, and all of those things, this is one of the challenges that comes along with it, right? It's lack of regulation. And it's equal access is equal access. So, Google doesn't know who's typing in sex,
right,
or whatever. So, it's one of those things, man. This is one of the challenges that comes with, a world, where we can get things like that, right?
What you said was really important is that communication aspect of it, right? Because that's the same thing that LL talks about in his book, in his articles, and the same thing with Ms. Day is that they talk about social support, right? They talk about their family is something that helped them get through their addiction. And so, LL always talks about, his wife, he talks about his family. And this is the same element that we need to incorporate. Like you mentioned, like your parents or as a caretaker, it's imperative that you get to your kid as early as possible. And I know a lot of parents think about like, well, oh, I don't, is my kid too early? I don't want to talk to them about this type of material, but you got to get to them before, again, the internet does or their friends do. And it's getting earlier and earlier. So like we mentioned, 10, 11 is a young age, but they might be getting and viewing things even sooner. So that's where the social support element needs to come in and kind of be more proactive as opposed to retroactive and saying like, hey, talking to little Johnny and say, hey, this is what this is. And he'll be like, oh, I already saw that. I saw that on such and such. I saw that on Brandon's phone. Like,
Man.
so you got to get to that communication aspect is so crucial in getting to them early. And we have to kind of get out of that frame of thinking of like, oh, my kid is too young, they're not seeing that. No, these kids, like you said, they get it like that. So
right. I mean, listen, a lot of things that parents, caregivers, all of us, tell our kids, it comes from a good place in terms of intent, right? But it doesn't necessarily, in terms of how things play themselves out in the world, it doesn't necessarily reap the benefits that we would want, right? Because most parents, and I'm not saying in a disparaging way, but most parents, rightfully so, right? We tell our children not to say certain words, right? Sexual words, right? We tell them to obey adults, right? And then when they're in certain situations where they have to make decisions about, should I watch that video? Is that an important thing to do? It makes it difficult for them to come talk to you about somebody showing them a pornographic video when they can't say penis.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've already told them over and over and over again, these are bad words, right? So again, I'm not encouraging people to just let their children say anything, right? But in terms of the same education that we give our kids, when they know their ABCs, right? They should know their private areas, right? They should know what they're called. They should know how to talk to you about those things. And parents got to continuously check, in with their kids, because if you don't check in, trust me, the availability is there. You know what I mean? So you got to be proactive in terms of talking to them about all of those things, right? Whether it be pornography, sexual abuse, or everything in between.
Yeah, totally. They definitely get drawn to the things that are taboo or things that we don't tell them or tell them not to do. They're going to get drawn to that even more because that's just, unfortunately, the nature of being a kid and wanting to be curious and explore things. So
right.
I'm sure this topic will come back up. It seems like porn is a trending topic on our podcast. So, yeah, we'll definitely something to continue to monitor, and like there's more and more information coming out with it. So it was definitely an interesting read.
Yeah.
All right, so switching gears. All right, another article that came across our desk was about a young girl, African American female, who said she has spent the majority of her life not being Black enough. All right, and she said this hasn't been the first time that she, had been feeling like this or had spoken about the issue. So she said that she had grown up in a pretty small town, and that town made it clear that she was different. So a lot of times she would be asked, "What are you? Can I touch your hair?" Or even maybe worse, right? Not even asked about these things. I'm sure there's a lot of things that a lot of people can identify with or had that experience.
Right.
So, um, so she said on one hand, she would experience all kinds of stories of her blackness, right? Being called the N-word or having a makeshift um, cross burned in front of her at a party, and having her achievements reduced to affirmative action. But then on the other side, she felt like she wasn't black enough. So she would be called or sometimes dubbed an Oreo, or people would say that she has good hair, that she talks white. So this is something that, that she's had to experience, on one side when she's around maybe a majority white population, is that, she's experiencing the racism. But then when she's around, her black peers, she's not black enough. And so, something that comes across is that racial imposter syndrome, which is a real issue that a lot of people struggle with, and it's more common than not. So, Timmy, what was your thought process reading through this article of not black enough?
Well, I mean, I'm familiar with this. A lot of people experience, have similar experiences to this. I kind of understand one side of it. I understand. Like, I understand, obviously, she was kind of talking about she knows who she is, right? Because of the one drop rule in terms of interacting with people with Caucasian or white people, right?
Mm-hmm.
She knows because of the one drop rule, that she's definitely a black female, right? So the controversy with this article really came with like in culture, right? The degree of acceptance that, and I mean, listen, I'm very familiar with that because I know individuals that have experienced that, but just in general, like our culture, we have a lot of like rigid rules in terms of blackness, right? In terms of who we include and who we kind of stigmatize, right? There's a lot of rigid rules. So I think we just, in general, I think there's a lot of reasons for that, of course, but I think we have a lot of work to do, us, all of us, right? Because I think the problem is when you start having rigid rules like that, Black people, like the Black experience is not one experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not monolithic. It's not one experience. So the problem is, there's a urban Black experience, there's a middle class Black experience, there's a rural Black experience. You know what I mean? There's a biracial Black experience. All of those are Black experiences, right? But we don't necessarily count them equally, right? And this is all in-group stuff that we do. So I do understand, why she would feel like that, because that, for some people, if you're not, confident in yourself, that can do a number on your identity, you know what I mean? And your self-worth and all of those things, right? Because you're being rejected from both sides. You're clearly Black, right? Whether you light skin, dark skin, African American, West Indian, you Black when y'all all get stopped by the police because y'all all Black.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So that she's been straight with for a long time, which people learn, or they have their moment, you know what I mean? And they learn. But the other part, I think, is harder for people to kind of accept, because for the person, it's their experience. You understand what I'm saying? If you have a person who's raised in a rural area, or like she said, kind of like a rural, small white town, right? She's having the Black experience there, but it is still the Black experience, just because it's not the same experience somebody might get in Jersey City or in Harlem, in Baltimore, doesn't make it less of a Black experience, because we tend to reject things that are different, right? So I think that's kind of part of the issue, part of the problem. But again, those are things that we've been dealing with as a culture for a very long time. They're not going to end, anytime soon. But we have rigid rules, man, and that's it's not a good thing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because her story. It's I've seen that a lot with the kids? And I don't know. I know you work with a lot of children and adolescents, but it's unfortunate, like you said, even to this day where you see that. And when we live like in this such a gray oriented world, and people have the freedom to like whatever they like, but it could be something as simple as music. I've seen
Right.
kids get bullied or be like, say like very big things they're saying to kids that, okay, you have a black little girl and she likes rock music, right? She likes Coldplay, she likes, Katy Perry, or she likes any alternative music, and they get ridiculed, they get made fun of because, like you said, these rigid rules. If it's not the same experience, or it's not in the majority of, okay, our culture, we come from the inner city, we come from whatever, and we like the same type of music, we like the same thing. If you're expressing anything that's remotely different, you know, they get bullied for it. They get
Right.
teased. They get all these other different things, and it's really unfortunate because now you have this individual who's now developing and experiencing this inner congruence, and is having issues with her self-esteem, her self-image. And kids are brutal. Kids are really are tough. And like you said, if you don't already have that confidence, that reassurance in yourself, it can become very difficult. And it can be, and it's personified in a variety of just different areas. Like you said, like she talks about the way she speaks, right?
Right.
That's pointed out, right? We had, you made the example of music. It could be the way someone dresses. So, you know,
Well,
but
see, this is the thing, bro. I
mhm,
think I wanted to kind of say something about that, right? Because they were talking about, she was talking about how black people would tell her she's not black enough, right? And that was like related, they would call her Oreo, and that was related to her, how she speaks, right? So she speaks using proper English, proper dialect, right? So again, this is what I mean by rigid rules, right? There's a lot of factors, but people don't understand the trap, right? The trap is, in our culture, there's an inverse relationship, right, between intelligence and blackness, right? So the smarter you are, the further you are away from being black.
mhm.
That's what this is.
Yeah.
This is people saying, so again, as black people, as black males, we can be aggressive, right? But we can't be cerebral. The moment we become cerebral and we're reasoning, we're white, right? This is a lot of problem people have with Barack Obama, right? Same thing she's talking about, right? So people don't understand the trap, right? There's an inverse relationship between that, right? Now, when we play into that, that's when you have people playing up stereotypes and acting ignorant on purpose. You know what I mean? And you have kids that feel like they feel like they have to do that, you know what I mean, because of that, because they won't be accepted by their peers if they don't, you know. And again, I think it comes down to it's a in culture kind of thing, right? So we got to accept, as black people, we have to accept and appreciate that there's more than one black experience. It's not just a black urban experience. There's a black middle class experience. There's hundreds of thousands of black people that grew, born and raised in the suburbs, and that's where their experience is. You know, and there's hundreds of thousands of black people born and raised in rural areas. You know what I mean? But again, culturally, right, we like to put ourselves in this one box, and all of that, it includes the biracial experience, you know. So that's my opinion, you know, but I think those are the type of things that lead to, like in terms of these rigid rules that lead indirectly to that inverse relationship, you know.
Let me ask you a
Barack
question.
Obama has talked about it. She talked about it. I mean, she's intelligent. She speaks well. Now she's an Oreo, the further removed from her blackness, right? So if she was an impressionable person, would that make her study harder? Not if she wanted friends. Not if she wanted friends that look like her, according to this. You know what I mean? So again, it's things that we got to work on.
Let me ask me a personal question. Have you ever experienced it?
Uh, I have. Yeah, I have. I mean, my experience is a little bit different. You know what I mean? But I have experienced that at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because again, I've always been a cerebral person. You know what I mean? I've always been a person that speaks a certain way. I mean, I obviously I talk differently when I'm speaking with my friends and all of that. But I've experienced it in certain environments. But again, it's like you find your way, man. You know what I mean? Because you can't. If I was to have gone along with how everybody wanted me to behave, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And
Right.
it's no disrespect to everybody else, but bro, like I didn't care what anybody was doing when I was 17. I was studying because I knew I wanted to get to Howard. You understand? Now, all of the images, all of the things that was surrounding me, not in my own home. I had strong men to kind of follow. You know, so all of the images that was going on around me didn't really matter because I could listen to whatever music, watch whatever movies I wanted to. The only people I was following was my brother and my father. You feel me? So at the end of the day, I ain't really care if, you know, the rest of the world told me that the smarter I got, the more whiter I got. It didn't really matter to me because that's not who I was following. You know what I mean? But have you ever experienced this, or do you know anybody that's experienced what's your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I've experienced it even as recently when I was on internship, right?
Okay.
So even at internship, we're essentially the psychologist on the unit, right? That's the way it was set up at our location. And um a lot of the floor staff, like the mental health techs, who I'm really, cool friends with, and I had an opportunity to work with them and even hang out with them, like outside of work, in the 2 years that I was there. But even like having further conversations like later on with them, like they would even said it, they admitted, they were just like, yeah, Kyle, we thought that you were one of those black guys, right? We thought that, you was because, when we first get there, you going in there,
one of those, huh?
yeah, we thought you were one of those. We thought you were one of those black guys that, just kind of, because the way you carried yourself and the way you talk proper, right? And you did the groups like you were cool, but we just thought you were one of those. And he was like, yeah, but when I started going to like, getting invited to like the fish fries and like kind of just talking to him more outside of work, then it was different because the conversation content changed. But again, because most of the the floor staff, the techs, of course, they're they're black and such. And again, I went in being who I am, like the same way how I present on on this podcast, in the same way that I interact with you, like that's how I present. Like I don't know
Right.
any way to be. I don't know any way how to talk really differently. Like even like again, when you and I are talking and stuff, it's different, but it's still the same to a certain extent. Do you see what I
Right.
mean? And yeah, absolutely. Like even again, this is a couple of years ago, but it's just like they automatically kind of like you said, put you in that box of okay, he's educated and he talks and speaks a certain manner. It's like okay, he's one of those black guys. He's that's what it is. Like
Yeah, man.
it's
I
it's
mean,
really wild. Like, you want to hear the wildest one that I got hit with? Are
yeah,
you ready? You ready for this? So I
yeah.
had a I'm trying to remember. She was a nurse or a tech. I think she was a tech. Yeah, she was a mental health tech. And again, most of these people, like even after we had these conversations, we're still cool and even talking to this day. But one tech came to me, was just like, you like, let me ask you a question. Is your daughter's mother white? I was just like, what?
What? What?
She automatically thought that my daughter's mother was white. Like she automatically thought, put me in the category of, yeah, you look like you're a guy who dates white women.
Listen, man. I
Yeah, like
mean,
that automatic. Cause I kind of had to serve her and kind of educate her on that point, not in a disparaging, disrespectful way, but I kind of had to, bring her back down and kind of have a brief conversation of like, like, all right, because I wasn't offended by it, but I'd use it as a learning moment to have that conversation with her. But like again, that's automatically because in our role, a lot of the individuals that we converse with outside of patients are nurses, social workers, psychiatrists, right? Administration. And a lot of these individuals, on average, depending on where you're working, are white, right? So she's like, oh, well, I only see you talk to white people, outside of the patients a lot of times, right? She's like, I only see you talk to the nurse. I'm like, well, I mean, the predominantly of that staff that I deal with, because I'm on the treatment team, are white. I mean, I can't control that, but automatically assumed, okay, this is the type of guy, he's educated, he's in this role, so he's only got to be dealing with white girls and all the different things. Like it was funny, but I absolutely had a more in-depth conversation about that. And she was just like, oh, I never thought about it like that. Like, yeah, you're right. I kind of gotta, that I was wrong for me to say that. And I'm like, nah, I get where you're coming from, but again, it's like we just gotta be more open-minded. So to kind of use that as an opportunity. But yeah, that was wild, man.
I mean, but if we think about it, right, on its face, like it's absurd, right?
Right.
Because what we're saying is intelligence is for white people. That's what we're saying.
That's exactly what we're saying.
But see, this is the problem I have with people, right? Because people will say that like this is how it plays out. Let's put the cards on it. This is how it plays out. There's an inverse relationship. So the smarter you are, the less black you are, right? Now, any person, if you walk up to them and call them stupid, they're going to be insulted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can't be smart. You can't call nobody stupid, right? People don't understand the trap, right? So ignorance is for us. We could be aggressive, right? No disrespect to athletes, but we can catch balls, right? We could pick up a microphone, right? But if we start doing math, then we're white. If you can pick up a microphone and be as great as an orator as Barack Obama, then you're white. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's why I said her experience, like we have a lot of work to do, all of us, right? Because I'm not blaming nobody, it's all of us, right? Because it's like we don't like when other cultures put us in one bucket, right? But in everybody, and we can remove all the other cultures, but we doing it at our own dinner table. Within our own families, we do it. You know what I mean? So we have a lot of work to do, and because again, that type of stuff only happens like it's divide and conquer, right? It's a trap.
Yes,
right? On its face, intelligence is not for us. That's crazy.
Yeah, even with making progress in life, you notice like you'll have the little, kind of over things. You're being bougie, right? You move up in life, you get a good job, you go to school, decent neighborhood, bougie, sellout, right? All these other different terms that are thrown out for being successful, right? For working hard. And so again, like you mentioned, if you're not securing yourself, if you're like, that could really cause a lot of inner conflict. These could cause a lot of issues.
Because think about it, right? And I mean all of us. I'm not just saying all of us, right? We're hypocrites, right? Because we know that exists within our culture, right? We reject people, we exclude them, you a sellout, this and that. If they got PhDs, if they're in high positions or whatever. But all of the people that are doing that, what do you think they tell their kids when they leave the house and go to school every day? You think they tell them don't study so you can be blacker? No, they say study hard so you can be the best you can be.
That's
right. So you can grow up and people could tell you that you're not black. It's absurd, right? But people do it every day. So in their personal life, they'll cast all type of judgments on people who might be educated or this and that, and then they go tell their kids to go be like them. This is what we do, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, I love my people, but this is what we do.
Yeah, it's that unfortunate crabs in a barrel mentality, which I'm really hoping that with these conversations, with things being more open with information, that we it gets better. We get more open-minded. But it's tough, man. It's always tough when you kind of get hit with that, and you view it or you see it, with kids or teenagers, because it's tough. Like it does happen, and it's unfortunate. So, but we'll definitely, this will be an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
So changing gears. All right. Lying, right? We talked about porn earlier because that's something that people lie about.
Right.
So we're gonna talk about lying overall. Okay, so people lie all the time. Let's just call it what it is. People lie all the time. You got some people that will flat out don't tell the truth. You have some individuals that they omit information. You have others that will minimize or exaggerate the truth or give vague answers. Right? Various types of degrees of being less than honest.
That's right.
And then you have people that lie for a variety of reasons, right? You have some people that lie to save face. You have some persons that spare the feeling. They lie because they're trying to spare the feelings of others. You have individuals that they lie because they want to get what they want, just pretty straightforward. And then you have others that are lying because they're trying to avoid any type of potentially disastrous consequences for themselves or others. So, trying to kind of self-preservation situation.
Right.
So research suggests that dishonesty is hard to spot and that there's no way to tell if someone is lying. So are there ways to improve lie detection? Well, apparently there is. And it's called the cognitive approach to lie detection. How about that? We're gonna teach people how to seek out liars.
Listen, all you liars out there, listen up.
We got you.
All the liars.
The jig is up.
It's over for you.
Still set. Gotta get a new playbook.
This was crazy, man. Cognitive approach to lie detection includes asking unexpected questions, asking for more information, and imposing cognitive load, right? So listen, some of this I thought was valuable. Some of it I thought wasn't really relevant, right? So the cognitive load part I thought was relevant, right? Because they were kind of talking about, does the person maintain eye contact with you, right? And how they were talking about like a person performing a secondary task, right? How it's harder to kind of do something and lie while you're doing it, right? Because the truth is right here. So I understand that. Now, that whole part, the last part when they were talking about people saying things in reverse order, I think that's kind of like, it doesn't really seem like a method that would do anything but piss anybody off, But the eye contact thing I think was important. And then the next part where they were like encouraging the person to say more, right? Like saying people that tell the truth can provide more relevant information, right? But liars have to fabricate. That's one of the ways I've always been able to root out a lie, right? When you ask that follow-up question and remember they were talking about the eye contact, the liar look at the ceiling, and then they think of the lie they're going to tell you, right? The truth is right here, though, for most people. So I thought that was relevant. And then they were talking about asking unanticipated questions, which I thought was important too, right? Because people that tell the truth, they're going to respond. Like, where were you at? The mall. Where were you at? What? If the person said, what? All the liars out there, listen up. If the person says, what? Then what are they, they're thinking about a lie. You know what I mean?
Stalling for time.
Right. So listen, I thought it was interesting. I also thought it was an interesting point how they pointed out like all the reasons why people lie. And then they were kind of saying like, and then they demand truth from like their children, their spouses, and everybody else that they want to, they demand truth from everybody else, but then they lie. Mm-hmm. So that part was a little crazy, but I thought some of this stuff, was kind of things that, I've been using for a long time, in terms of the eye contact and asking unanticipated questions. What have you been using?
I looked at so some of the techniques I thought it was kind of hit or miss. I thought some of them were not practical, not effective. Like the whole asking somebody to repeat a statement in reverse order. I'm like, is this an interrogation? Or like, what am I a person a suspect or? So I felt like that's not really practical. Like you said, it's all it's going to do is piss people off. As far as with the cognitive load, I totally agree with the strong emotions aspect, right? So absolutely, if someone is highly emotional, it's more than likely that lie is going to fall apart. because whatever intense emotion that they're experiencing at the time, yeah, they're gonna just start firing off different things, and that's gonna fall through. There's gonna be a lot of holes. What I did like, now to maintain the eye contact, I think it depends on your level of lying, like how good you are at it, right? Because we have some pretty proficient liars. You know that. You have some liars that will lie you, like will look you dead in your eye and just straight tell you, you're like, look, the sky is red.
Yo, and some of them are under the age of 16. They're looking right in your face. Right. I didn't do it.
Like you know, and I know, man. Listen, we've had patients inpatient, man, and they will sit here and lie and say, I didn't hit him first. And like you go review those cameras, and you're like, like really?
Yeah, man.
You know,
crazy.
So I mean, like you said, usually if they're like kind of darting off, you know, if the engagement is low, yeah, that's absolutely a cue. I did appreciate the encouraged person to say more, but however, a method that I've used is like silence, right? So I think that's one of the best things as trained clinicians, that we learn how to use silence, right? Because you know, a liar, right? You know, if you just ask them one question and you just kind of sit there and stare at them after they finish their first answer, and you don't give them any more else, they're gonna add to it.
Oh, they're gonna keep talking.
Yeah, they're gonna keep talking. They're gonna talk their way right out of it, right? Because they're figuring like, oh, he doesn't believe me, or I got to add more to the story, and then it just becomes completely grandiose, and it's all of a sudden, you know, you weren't where you're at. You were jumping off of a helicopter saving the world or something, right? It just turns into something completely different. The unanticipated questions, I like that. But then before that, they were talking about in the encouraging person to say more. They mentioned something about showing a model statement that demonstrates a high level of detail and asking the individual to draw a detailed sketch of the location of the event. I'm looking at like, wait a minute. Like, first you wanted to replay the question or the whole issue backwards, right? Now you're asking them to draw a sketch, so they turn in from a suspect into an eyewitness. And I'm like, I don't know who has these type of materials like on them, where you're just like, hold on, bro, let me get my notebook, and I need you to draw me what exactly took place.
I just skipped over that, man.
I saw that. I was just like, okay, but
that was useless information.
But the unanticipated questions, that could be useful. You know, definitely, because like you said, liars are good, man. They have time to prepare for the lie. You know, they're rehearsing it. They're going over things. You do got to throw them off, right? You do,
all right, so I got a question.
Unpopular question.
I got a question for you then.
Right.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay.
Give me one good reason to lie, and then tell me what's your tell with other people that you know they lying.
When it's self-preservation, right? So what I've noticed, there are certain people, I'm not going to put these people out on blast, but I know when they lie to me, they'll say a similar statement, right? So if I ask them like where something is, they'll be like, oh, I don't know, I was looking for it also. And I'm just like, you know, there are a couple individuals that I know, I'm like, okay. Like I didn't ask you that. Like they it's almost like they add to the story again. Right. So it's just like, I didn't ask you. I just simply asked you a closed question, and then you added something else. And then I've only noticed that person always does that when they're not telling the truth. So you know, but yeah, I mean, mainly self-preservation, man. I mean, that's what people are gonna lie for. Like you know, if someone's gonna ask you, whether it be in a relationship, hey, how do I look? I mean, depending on how strong your relationship is and how you're going to describe that bad news you got to give that person, or you going to, you know, you tell them that they look great. You really don't, you know, sometimes you know, but you're doing it out of your self-preservation, doing that for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because you want the rest of that evening to go well.
Right. You don't want to get put out.
You know absolutely, right? I wasn't talking to her. I don't know who that is.
like, how's my hair? That's what they're going to say. How's my hair look?
Like,
great.
It looks, yeah, good. That's when you ask the follow-up question. Do you like it?
Yo, I was gonna say the same thing. Like, a good reason to lie, I think, is spare somebody's feelings. You know what I mean? In certain instances, like you know, like it's not always, that's a good reason to lie to me, to spare somebody's feelings, you know, because sometimes you just make somebody feel good, you know, it's worth it, you know, with little things. In terms of the tell, for me, it's all the extra information, you know, and looking all around in the sky for your answer, you know what I mean? But I always ask a follow-up question, especially if I think somebody's lying to me. I always ask a follow-up question. You know, if it's somebody in my personal life, I just confront it directly. I'll be like, stop lying to me. And then they always ask, I'm dead serious. And then the look you see on it, I'll be like, why you lying to me? You know, or use me out to test out the lie. And then they'll just, when they talk about extra information,
they
add extra information and make a mistake, you know?
Especially when you didn't even like solicit further extra information. You just like,
right.
Okay. Also, I've noticed when people become not just defensive, but they become like additionally emotionally or intense about it, right? When you become like expansive on it, and it's like it's not congruent with what I'm asking about or about. It's like, you know, when they you totally get over emotionally about the thing, and I'm like, whoa, what's easy? I'm just asking you if you saw my wallet, like that, or did you see my phone? I didn't ask you, then you're getting a hype. It's like, okay, all right, there's something else going on here.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, but the silence, man, that's the silence. So liars, you need to get better at and more comfortable with silence, okay? Because after this podcast, people are gonna come after you, and they're gonna use silence, and they're gonna use follow-up questions like Dr. J and I just mentioned.
Right. All the lies out there. Stop looking for your answer in the ceiling.
Listen. Just look at you. What I do is just like, look, man, just look at the person's neck or their nose. Like you got to focus in on something. Like you can't be searching for the answers. You just gotta like look. You gotta look them straight in, because the eye contact will throw them off.
That's right.
The eye contact will at least buy you another day, maybe a few hours before they go back and check stuff. So that's just my unbiased advice and recommendations for the liars. But don't lie, okay?
All right, man, that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
So before we get out of here, like we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, we want to make this more interactive. So in addition to next episode where we're gonna have our usual topics, Dr. J and I were talking behind the scenes that we want to, again, in a show of appreciation and an attempt to interact with our listeners and our viewers, we want to hear back from you. We always talk about having the comments and getting feedback, which has been great. Dr. J and I have absolutely been conversing with a lot of different listeners and watchers on YouTube or on the just different, whether it be on Facebook or other just different things. So we appreciate all the love that you guys have been giving us. But what we also want to do, and we're trying something new for the next episode, is we want to hear from you any questions that you guys have, or maybe some, maybe there's a topic that you want some advice or you want some feedback on. And what we want you to do is that we want you to email these questions or some of these things to us, right? So we can actually answer it on the podcast or during the next episode. So the email is pretty simple. The Black Psychologist Podcast at gmail.com. Again, that is the Black Psychologist Podcast at gmail.com. Do it in video format if you feel comfortable, emailing us your question or recording yourself doing the question. And what we're going to do is that we'll address the question or the statement or the inquiry or whatever you want to send us while we're on the podcast next episode. So we want to make it more interactive. You feel free to share your name and whatever you're comfortable sharing with us. This is what we're trying something new, trying to pump up the volume a little bit, doing a little something. But yeah, absolutely, guys. So if you guys have any questions, any concerns, or want some feedback, some input from two dope psychologists, absolutely, please email us at the Black Psychologist Podcast at gmail.com so we can talk about it and bring it up and have that discussion on the next episode. So do what you guys do. Continue to support, and so we can bring you up and shout you out on the pod.
Looking forward to it. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Anything else before we go, Dr. J?
No, just of course we want to thank everybody for listening, supporting. We're definitely appreciative of everything. Everybody that listens, we're just thankful, and please share or continue to leave comments, and we look forward to answering the question.
All right, absolutely, guys. So once again, this is the Black Psychologist Podcast with Dr. J and myself. Again, continue to listen, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Google, Apple Podcasts. We're now on SoundCloud also. Anywhere where you can find your podcast, we're on there. All right. Spotify, Pandora, all those things. So thank you guys for tuning in, watching, and signing out. We'll see you guys next week.
All right, bro.
All right, man.